Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of It Depends. We are continuing with our coverage on data catalogs. And today I've turned the tables. The two esteemed hosts of Catalog and Cocktails are now today my captive audience. So how do you guys feel? You're the ones who do the interviews. This time you are being interviewed.
This is fun. I feel like I'm missing my cocktail. I actually felt like maybe I should make a cocktail before I joined you today.
Yeah. By the way, I have a secret. I have saved some cocktail for a future time when I get on your show. So,
We would love to have you.
Love this. This is really exciting to be able to have both of us at the same time, because I think we've each done podcasts individually, but we've never been on a podcast, both of us. So
wow.
Unique.
This is definitely unique. So data.world is quite a unique catalog. There are a lot of interesting things going for it. First of all, congratulations on your latest round. I would love to see, have you introduce yourself. Juan, maybe if you don't mind doing the honors, we can start with you and then we'll go to Tim.
Yep. Hi, so I'm Juan Sequeda. I'm the principal scientist here at data.world. At data.world, I work a lot with Tim and with Brian Jacob, one of the founders, and work with customers to be able to identify what their problems are. I do help the technical sales, and at the end of the day, kind of bring in and drive strategy and vision. I joined the company almost 3 years ago when they acquired my previous company, Capcenta, which was a company I started out of my PhD in computer science here at the University of Texas at Austin.
Oh, wow. Wow. So you have been you went to school in Austin, you live in Austin, data.world is based in Austin?
Correct. I've been here for over 15 years now.
Over 15 years. Wow. We're going to come back to Austin. So right. Austin is, by the way, stealing our thunder from California, if I may. Like, we're losing to Austin at this point,
Thunder and people. We're sucking all the people over.
Yes, but don't worry, because Austin will become like San Francisco Bay Area, and then they'll come back to San Francisco. This is just how the world.
Don't say that.
Tim, how about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, hey, Tim Gasper, VP of Product over at data.world, also co-host of Catalog and Cocktails with Juan. And I've been in the data space as a product manager for about 14 or 15 years now, doing Hadoop as a service. I was at Rackspace for a while. I spent some time at a large consultancy, Computer Sciences Corporation. I've been in customer identity. So I've worked at data and AI from many different angles, and it's always come back to the same problems. Like, where's my data? How do I trust my data? How do I get access to my data? And so I'm excited to finally be at a company that's really focused on how do we solve that.
So Tim, one thing I didn't expect, and I'm really happy to hear you mentioned data and identity. And I just feel that when I'm on, like, let's say AWS, my biggest roadblock is identity. The all IAM policies. Can you drill down on what is your exposure to identity?
Yeah, sure. So before I was at data.world, I was actually at a company called Jan Rain. And Jan Rain was one of the most popular customer identity solutions. So, you think like Coca-Cola, for example, was one of their customers, and Procter & Gamble, and you go to all these sort of branded experiences where you want to log in and you want to have engaging sort of brand conversations and engagements. And they powered all the login, registration, identity, and consent management for those different solutions. And so identity was really important as a trust factor, but also really important from a analytics perspective, right? I want to understand my consumers. And ultimately, you want to do really interesting things with that data. First party data is so critical, especially in that retail arena, right? In that sort of consumer brand arena. And so, identity, people, and data and analysis, really, those are three things that have to work well together, and they have to be related to each other. And I know we'll probably talk more about, knowledge graphs and things like that today, but if you can get all three of those things really good, your data, your analysis and use cases, and your identities, your people working well together, then that's kind of what really starts to untap really your enterprise knowledge.
That is great. Thank you so much for that insight. I've always believed that data management, identity and access management, data privacy, data security, they're all sort of starting to merge. And so we'll talk about knowledge graphs, but before, maybe this is a good point. Where do you see data governance heading in the short term and over a long period of time, like 3 to 5 to 10 years? What's the future for data governance?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll start with that, and then Juan, I know you have a lot of thoughts on this topic as well. Over the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years, we see governance really turning into something that, first of all, is very enablement focused, right? Now the topic is very much like, how do we empower people with data, with knowledge? We really truly believe that catalogs are going to have more users in the enterprise than a business intelligence tool. There will be more people using a catalog than using Excel, right? That's really the vision of where sort of engaging with data is going to go. And so if you follow that logic, if you kind of assume that that's where we're headed, then it's really about like, how do we turn sort of this into the glue layer, where it can really bring together all aspects of sort of governance, whether it's, getting access to things, being able to discover things, where's my sensitive data, where's the most valuable data, bringing that all together and making sure that it works really well with your data ecosystem. So that's really where we see things going, and how do we embrace the most technical users and the least technical users together into this sort of glue experience.
And Juan?
Yeah, so one of the things I talk about and I write a lot about is this shift that we are going through from this data first world to what I'm calling the knowledge first world for us. I think, and what I mean by that is, by knowledge first is we're thinking about people first, context first, relationships first. We've lived in this world of just give me data, I need more data, more data. I'm like, really, is we haven't solved our most pressing problems because we lack data? I mean, Einstein's definition of insanity, to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So we need a shift in here. And the shift is to start thinking more about knowledge. So I think, frankly, what we'll see is that data catalogs and governance, it's not going to be just about the data. It's going to be about data and the knowledge. And actually, a lot of our customers actually say, it's like, you guys are not really a data, you're much more than a data catalog. And actually, like, they're even starting to say, oh, you're like a knowledge catalog. And I think we'll talk more about knowledge graphs. In reality, a data catalog is really your first app on top of your knowledge graph, on top of all the data and knowledge that's being integrated. So that's where we're going to be heading, is data more into the knowledge.
So this is interesting hearing both of you. You paint a very compelling picture of data catalog, but I have to be honest. I hear both sides of the story. I'm a huge supporter of data catalog, and I actually ascribe to this notion that data catalog is where I go to discover my data. And it's not just data, it's actually metadata, but so I say it's the difference between content and context is only one letter from N to X, and we have a context in that. But then I hear there's another side of the industry that says data catalogs have not taken off. It's been so many years we've been talking about it. Adoption is really difficult.
I think that's very true. I think there have been so many catalog failures, right? Folks that have tried to implement a catalog and it didn't take. And I think that this is not an easy problem, right? Because a catalog that's effective, that's successful, is first of all going to be able to integrate with lots of things, right? It needs to have a very integrated approach to your different data systems, your different knowledge sources, your different analytical systems, right? And then on top of that, it has to be very accessible to a broad range of personas, right? It needs to be good enough for the data scientists to be able to understand their data and be able to say, hey, like I'm gonna use this data set. It needs to be accessible enough to the salesperson who just wants to download the CSV of the recent sales report, right? Those are two such different users, and yet the knowledge, the institutional knowledge that needs to bind it all together is technically the same, right? And so I think that's the biggest challenge there. And I think where we're finally seeing this new shift with the new generation of catalogs is actually an emphasis on sort of how do we provide an intelligent experience, where now if you're a data scientist, then you're going to go in and you're going to see tables and you're going to see columns and you're going to see that sort of detailed information, and you're going to be able to leverage that, right? Profiling information, so on and so forth. And then at the same time, if you're more of that business user, you can get more of that Google-like experience, right? You just want sort of that enterprise search type of experience where you say, hey, order information. It's like, oh, here's the most popular CSV in your company, right? And it's approved. Oh, cool. That's the thing I need, right? So I think this is kind of that push and pull. And we've had very technical catalogs. We've had very casual or business-oriented catalogs. And now finally, we're getting to a world where like Facebook for data, Amazon for data can actually serve both of these audiences.
And to add to this, one of the ways I like to frame this is I call this the two lenses of a catalog. I actually have it here. This is one of my colleagues that I get to spend time every month chatting is Gary George at Indeed. We actually did a webinar with him, and he told me, talking to him, I have this here, told everybody. It's not about two catalogs. It's about having two lenses of a catalog. And what I mean by that is that you have your data producers, your technical folks, your data engineers, data stewards, and you have your data consumers, your business users, your data analysts, and your ML folks, and so forth. The data producers need they need the technical metadata. They want the lineage, they want the quality, they want the sensitive data, they need all that stuff. Let's be very honest here. You think the consumers care about that stuff? No, they don't care. They say, I want a table that says orders with the columns that make sense for me and a green check mark. That's all I care about. And right now, we don't have those catalogs for those two different lenses. So I want to have also the catalog gives me a lens of saying, oh, this is for the consumers who have that. Now, think the analogy I always bring up is like shopping on Amazon or any of your favorite e-commerce platform. The user who goes there has an intention, and they're going to go search for something. They're going to go find their product, their data product, and it's going to have reviews or how it's going to be used and so forth. That is the experience they want. For your technical users, they're going to need more of the lineage and the quality. So those are the two lenses of the catalog we need to be thinking about.
So we are getting there. So we are getting to this multidimensional, satisfying the technical, the business users, going to a catalog to do a natural language search to find the most relevant information with context. So that's a great starting point. What are the use cases that you see? So to me, search is the means to the end. What are the different end use cases that your customers are using data.world for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that, again, it depends on like the different personas and folks that are using it in terms of what their goals are. And ultimately, that's one of the challenges and also great opportunities around catalog, is because it's kind of a platform, right? That one of the most common things is sort of this enterprise data marketplace, right? What are the most important and valuable data sets that our company has that can have the most impact on what you are doing in the business? And let me organize that, right? Let me organize it by domain. Let me organize it by use case. Let me organize it by subject matter expert, and really help people to go and have that shopping experience around their data to find those data sets, whether you're creating them internally or you're buying them, right? We have a bunch of companies that we work with that are more in the consulting space and things like that. They do a lot of data purchasing, a lot of data hunting, and the catalog is an important place to bring that stuff together. So I think that enterprise data marketplace is one very key aspect here. But if you want to kind of continue with the retail analogy, right? If that's sort of more like the storefront aspect, then there's the whole supply chain aspect. Like how did the thing get in the store, and how do I know I can trust it? And who is the person that if there's a problem with this, I need to contact the factory person and let them know, hey, your factory's got an issue. You really need to give better products here, right? That supply chain aspect also is really important. There's a bunch of use cases there, right? Data quality, troubleshooting, impact analysis, right? So I'm somebody who works with an upstream database or an upstream data system, and I'm about to change the schema, right? Or maybe there's a problem with the data right now, and it's going to take me a week to fix it. Who do I impact? Like what dashboards am I going to break? Who do I need to contact and let know that they need to just be aware that the dashboard doesn't make sense for the next week? I think these are some of these use cases that folks are really leaning on. And there's also some like more advanced use cases as well that some of our customers are doing. And like, I don't know if Juan, maybe you want to go into some of those more advanced catalog use cases.
So to add to a couple of things that Tim was saying, like when it comes to like searching data sets, we have customers like WPP, right? And we have worked with like large consulting firms, and they're have thousands to 10,000 users who need to go search for data sets, right? And they're buying data sets. They use data.world to go search for these data sets. So that's one thing. Kind of on the other side of like the technical, we have a lot of use cases where I have my legacy mess. I got my monolith, my SQL Server database that has the SQL Server instance itself has, I don't know, 500 databases. They all have thousands of tables, and I need to migrate to the cloud. Go do lineage. What is that? How do I start? How do I start migrating, right? So let's identify where complexity is. So because we're all in a graph, so we can actually do graph analysis and figure out, oh, this is your central node. Like, do you know that there is this thing that has 30 things that go into it and 40 things that go out to it? And who's the owner of this? Like, let's go understand that, right? So those are more when people are doing like cloud migrations or just trying to understand the mess that they're in. And then what's really exciting and kind of in the position that I am, I get to talk to folks who are doing like the next things is because we're built on the knowledge graph, it really is a foundation for your enterprise AI. So for example, Choreograph, which is a WPP company itself, we create and manage their entire identity graph. So for they have an identity graph for every single adult in the US. We've created a graph that brings in 20 billion data points. Think about this, 20 billion data points, and all of that gets reduced to 200 million adults in the United States. All that happens on data.world. Other types of use cases that we're seeing, people are like thinking about, remember I said the data catalog is not just about cataloging the data, the metadata, but also the knowledge of people. Well, we're cataloging all the jobs that are occurring. Here's all the ETL jobs. Well, the ETL jobs are happening in Informatica, they're happening in a Python script, they're happening in all these things. I want to also catalog the people within my organization and their skills. Who's retiring soon? Who has the expertise of the company, of the tools? We have a bunch of people who are retiring who know Informatica. We're not hiring Informatica people. We got a bunch of Informatica jobs and we're migrating to the cloud. This is where the advanced kind of the folks who realize that the data catalog is much more than data metadata, but about knowledge. They realize, oh, I want to bring in my people, my use cases, my business decisions. So those are the types of customers that we have who are thinking about those very much more advanced use cases.
So one, you mentioned WPP, which is one of the largest advertising companies in the world. Since data.world is a SaaS product, correct?
That's correct.
So you probably have a like great statistics as to number of users. So I'm just curious, without mentioning anything that's under NDA, what's the maximum number of users you see on a catalog? Just getting an idea, is it tens, hundreds, thousands?
Yeah, sure. So two lenses on that. One of them is our largest enterprise deployment so far, which is, I believe, over 23,000 users for a single enterprise. So that's sort of enterprise scale, right? And then if you look across our open data catalog, so data.world, in addition to having enterprise data catalogs, also has an open data catalog. We have over 1.2 million users that are in our open data catalog. And so that may be the largest data catalog out there in the world.
What does that have? What does the open data catalog have? Do you, in the city of San Francisco, there is SF data. Would I find that through data.world?
Yep. So government data, San Francisco, data.gov, UK government has a bunch of data sets in there, bunch of different sort of government data sets, nonprofit data sets, different nonprofit organizations. So you get a bunch of different sort of open data sets out there that are in this open data catalog. And then interesting use cases where you see like the interplay between sort of open data and enterprise data. And one example is that actually one of our customers, also a member of the open data community, is the Associated Press. And they have a bunch of very interesting data sets around things like policing and COVID and other types of things. And those are things that are, first of all, very interesting and valuable to the open data community and trying to do analysis and collaboration, sort of citizen data science around data. But then also these data sets are really critically important to the analysis that you're doing within your business as well.
The San Francisco Open Data, data.gov, these are huge sites. Are you connecting to them, or are you making a copy? Are you scraping data? How are you cataloging all that data?
Yeah, sure. So it's in some cases it's them, pushing data to us, but in many cases it's actually, we have a bunch of crawlers, right, that we're able to go out and connect to different data sources and either index them from a metadata perspective or actually bring them into data.world. And so a lot of that same technology that we've tested out on the open data side of things is what ultimately we also use for enterprise data as well, being able to connect to enterprise data sources and crawl metadata, or safely bring in data sets directly into your catalog as well.
And to add to that, that's one of the advantages of us having the open data community, is that we can actually test a lot of the features and capabilities. And I mean, we can do A/B testing for millions of users, right? So
yeah. So the source databases, open data, they have their own classification. Are you ingesting their classification and enhancing it by your own classification? Or reusing how they have already classified data?
So if there's metadata that we can extract that's coming from these different services, then yeah, we can map those things to fields on our side. And then, we have features like auto tagging and things like that, which not only our enterprise can leverage, but the open community can benefit from as well, right?
That is great. Let's talk about knowledge graph, because knowledge graph in my mind is one of the distinguishing features of data.world. How do you define knowledge graph? What's the underlying technology, and why is knowledge graph the way to go?
Yeah, so data.world is a data catalog powered by a knowledge graph. Okay. And knowledge graphs are just, I always say, you're integrating data. It comes from diverse heterogeneous sources, and you want your real world concepts and your real world relationships to be first-class citizens. And that's what we call the ontology, your schema, your model right there. So when it comes to metadata, what is that model? It is, I have a resource that could be a data resource, could be a terminology resource, could be an analytical resource. All resources have these stewards, which are agents, which are people, right? A data resource can be a database, can be a table, a column is part of a table, right? I'm just really describing now elements that you would draw them on the whiteboard, and this is the model of it. So I always say that if you're a knowledge graph, if you're a data catalog powered by a knowledge graph, there's really three things, very, very specific. One is that you need to be able to have that ontology, be able to have that model of your world here. At Data, we use all these open standards. So first of all, we're all based on the RDF open standard, right? So that's number one. And when it comes to representing our metadata, we use all the open vocabularies. For example, we use DCAT, which is the data catalog vocabulary by the W3C, to go represent catalogs. I mean, this is work that has already been done by world's experts. We use Dublin Core to represent a lot of the metadata. Dublin Core has been around for decades by the library science community. We use SCOS, which is a simple knowledge organizational systems vocabulary, which is how you represent glossaries, taxonomies, thesauries. We use Provo, which is the provenance ontology, to represent provenance and data lineage. All of these are models that have already exist, or the standards to be able to go interoperate with the metadata. And we use that as the basis to go integrate all the metadata we're bringing in. So that's number one. And so we have a very well-defined model. Which, well,
and just to interject real quick, Juan, you don't have to know about any of those things. You just use the catalog and it'll automatically create.
So our catalog powers all of this. And actually, which leads me to the second thing, is that it's completely flexible and open, which means that you can go extend and bring in any type of metadata that you want. And I think this is the powerful thing. If you truly are a data catalog powered by a knowledge graph, you are by definition able to catalog anything. No ifs, ands, or buts. And this is something that you should be able to go catalog it literally immediately. No, you got to wait till the next release. No, because you just extend it. You're saying, well, for example, we have a concept as a dashboard. Well, I have a Tableau dashboard. Well, I have a very specific BI tool dashboard. Okay, you can just go add that and you would inherit all the other properties. So that's the second thing. And the third thing, which makes it even more powerful, is that all the metadata that you bring in is queryable. And it's queryable in the graph. And because we're using RDF, we use a standard called Sparkle to go query this. So remember I was saying that we have in Lineage, for example, it's a graph, right? This thing comes from this, you draw the graph. I can do graph analysis. Show me the shortest path between things. Show me the node, centrality nodes, and so forth. That really gives you the true power of a data catalog. You're muted.
Thank you. If I hypothetically draw out an architecture, let's say I have data in Snowflake and I use an ETL engine, let's say Informatica, and then I have Tableau reports on top. If I put data.world catalog, will it be able to read all these? And then how is it able to connect like the Tableau reports to the source and the ETL? Like, how is this graph magically taking shape?
Well, yeah. This is why identity is important, right? And part of the graph is to be able to identify, is to create identifiers. And this is something that I tell people, I think even just in general, when it comes to just enterprise data management, we really don't think about identity. So one of the things that we do is that we create identifiers and able to reconcile identifiers. And we know, given the way how we create identifiers, we know that this is an identifier from this ETL tool Informatica is referring to the same thing that's in this thing in Snowflake, which is the same thing that may be inside of Tableau. So that's part of how you're connecting the graph, is having identity. So that's a very crucial thing.
And honestly, lineage is pretty hard. It's a hard problem, yes. Right? And there's a lot you can accomplish through sort of heuristics and sort of direct identification. And then there's a lot that you kind of need to do that's a little fuzzier and sometimes actually requires a little bit of business input, right? And so that's where I think having that flexible, that queryable capability ends up becoming really important, because out of the box, you can get a lot. But then, you know, lineage, we tell people lineage is a journey, not a destination. And so you got to be prepared to go on that journey, right?
And one more thing I want to add is, think about this. We're all used to kind of the X360, right? We think about customer 360, product 360. Well, a catalog is metadata resource 360. Give me everything about this table, about this column, right? All right. But then what we need to start thinking, right? You want to have everything is in the graph, because I want to have a people 360, my employee 360, which happens to be the steward. I want to know everything that the steward is. But remember that example I was telling you about, here is this job, this ETL job and what technology it's in. I want to know the people who happen to be the steward and they know these technologies, and you start connecting this all together. So that's why your data catalog is your first app on the knowledge graph of your metadata 360. Then you have your employee 360, product 360, keep going.
And is this time series in the sense that, like, you know, as the metadata changes, can I do time travel and see a view of how the metadata looked 2 months ago, roll back?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny that you say time travel. We actually have a feature called time travel, which is how you look back at time. But yeah, but basically, you know, one thing that's important to any graph system, and this is how we've built our knowledge graph, right? There's a search component, there's a graph lake component, and there's a transactional graph component. So all these things have to work together. That's where a lot of our 50 plus patents come from, is how this all comes together. Is that, you know, you want to be able to work across the time dimension too, right? And so every sort of snapshot of the graph needs to represent sort of a version in the graph, and that's sort of the, you know, we talk about triples in sort of the graph language, right? And then there's quadruples, which is like often the fourth dimension is the time dimension, right?
Do you have cases where you go in and the customer or prospect says, well, I already have 1, 2, even more data catalogs, but we are going to use data.world for some certain use cases? If that's the case, how do you integrate the metadata? Are there open APIs, or these custom APIs?
Yeah, that's a interesting question, and it's come up for us before, right? Where, you know, as we mentioned, right, companies have failed with catalogs. They also, in many cases, have multiple catalogs, right? A catalog for this department and for that department, or a catalog that has this use case, but it didn't address this other use case. And so they needed to buy another catalog. And so, one of the things that we really try to embrace is the whole catalog of catalogs concept, where you may want to, obviously you may want to bring data.world or, a catalog into a specific use case and kind of do more of a side by side. That's totally fine. Right. But you may actually want to bring in, metadata from some of your other legacy implementations of catalogs and have more of that consolidated view so you can search across all of it. And so that's where, what Juan mentioned, the ability to have a model that can integrate with anything. And allows you to bring in any metadata and then map it into a common metadata model ends up becoming really important, not just so you can integrate with these other tools, but also so you can accommodate potentially the weird ways that you may have set them up because everybody kind of sets up their, their infrastructure and their catalogs in weird ways. And then now they want to integrate with it.
Yeah, no, we work with customers. I've actually worked directly with customers who say, here's my old catalog system that is literally in an Access database, right? Or some other proprietary thing that I built and I'm cataloging all the ETL jobs and I need to put this into data.world. We have so many ways to go put that in. From you can go write code and here's our model to go do this. Generate the data directly in the RDF syntaxes like Turtle. We have APIs to go do that. Heck, we've uploaded the CSV dumps and you can write queries to put that inside of data.world immediately. So many different ways. Yeah. We've had other customers they've actually built their homegrown catalog for a decade, and they've just come to the realization that they did the ROI calculation. It's not worth it anymore. And we just gave them all the specs of our model. And I think overnight, a couple nights, I saw what they did. They did it themselves. And then they literally migrated their entire catalog that has been built for 10 years inside of data.world in a couple of days.
I think that being said, more often than not, though, we see folks ditching the previous catalog and just starting fresh because it didn't do what it was meant to do. Maybe the people who brought it in to the company are no longer there, and they want to start over because they want to start with adoption first, with enablement first, cloud first, knowledge graph first, and that requires sometimes hitting the reset button if you really truly want to make sure you don't boil the ocean, right?
What is your technology stack? So we talked about knowledge graph, RDF. Is this an open source RDF? Is it your own graph database? And what are the other pieces of your technology stack?
Yeah, so from the knowledge graph perspective so all the metadata is in RDF, right? So we use RDF for the metadata, the standards, in the schema language, and everything is in all open standards to go do that. We have our storage layers, we have something called it's called RDF HTT, which is basically like the compressed format for RDF, which is the Parquet files for graph data to do that. But we also use Parquet about some stuff. And then, Tim, you can probably talk a lot about more like the AWS infrastructure that we use.
Yeah, so we're based in AWS, and we are currently deployed into the US, and we're also deploying our Europe data center actually as we speak. We're going to be moving into Ireland, and our goal is to, even though most folks are okay with their metadata living in the US, the idea is that if you do want to persist your metadata in different compliance domains, different locations, that you're able to do that. So we're building out our global network right now. And everything that we do in the cloud side of things is fully orchestrated and multi-tenant in the sense of how we're kind of doing our command and control of it all. And for certain customers, they want to do single tenant implementations, and we want to be able to like hook into their networks and things like that. And so we can accommodate essentially a kind of a full spectrum of fully managed SaaS based in Amazon using that kind of an approach.
I noticed when I was reading up about your funding round, which happened in March, Series C, 50 million, correct?
Yep.
From Goldman Sachs, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it's great. So a few weeks ago, you had that. I noticed Prologis, which is in the US, they have these big warehouses they rent out. I think like cloud data centers are there, Walmarts, and they all rent. I got introduced to them many years ago as a Denodo customer, and I think they're a big proponent of Denodo. Just curious, how do you work with these data consumption technologies like Denodo?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great question. Because a lot of folks ask, like, how does it fit into the broader stack? And things like virtualization, for example, are another sort of, element of the glue layer, right? Well, first of all, you mentioned, Prologis. We have a bunch of customers that have invested in us. So we're really excited to have that, like Prologis, Vopak, Associated Press, and there's actually a few others as well. And it's always a great sign when your customers are investing in us, in you. That's sort of a great endorsement. But specifically, you asked about Denodo, and actually, Denodo for us it's another source, right? You might want to connect to it and understand, what are the tables that Denodo is connected to. Data.world has. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Denodo is virtualizing, right? So it's not a source. Denodo is virtualizing, and the source is still different.
Well, but that you can actually have, tables and views defined within Denodo. You can actually define some semantics within Denodo, which you then might want to bring in as potentially like a metric or something like that, right? And so in that sense, it's another metadata source that may also be connected to a source. And so this is where we get some complex sort of lineage here. But ultimately, we catalog Denodo, and so we do for Prologis, for example. But we also virtualize Denodo. And I know that sounds kind of weird, the idea of like virtualizing, but like, ultimately, if you want to be able to federate across your entire landscape, then you might want to be able to combine, a query on Denodo with a query on Snowflake and bring those two things together. And so, that's really the approach that we're taking, is like, you should connect to all these different things. And if certain use cases make sense to use just data.world's built-in virtualization, which we have built into our catalog, great. But, things like Denodo, Dremio, we integrate with all of them.
Actually, that's interesting, because when I hear data.world, 80% of conversations about data catalog, but then you have data virtualization, which I don't hear too much about it. You also have ETL-like data transformation capabilities. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, you can do like semantic mappings and data semantic integration. Yep.
I see. So I want to change tracks and talk about the company. How's the company doing? Before we even go there, before we talk about the growth, you are both in Austin. Austin just hosted a in-person conference after a long time. I believe you both were there. Just curious, what did you see at Data Council, and what's new?
Yeah. So first of all, it was a fascinating to finally be back at a conference and go meet with people. And actually, I was super excited because we organized, everybody was organizing events. There were satellite events all over the place, and we organized a catalog and cocktail events because a lot of our guests were actually there. So I finally got to meet many of them. So what happened is that there were, I would say 80% of the people there were vendors, startups, 10% or 15% were VCs, and probably 5-10% were just the actual users, or who you would think that you would be selling to or something. So it was a very skewed kind of scenario. And what do I interpret out of that? It's like, I guess we've all been busy in the last 2 years while we haven't seen each other in person. So and we're not getting together. So that's one thing. Second, too much, in my opinion, way too much conversation just on tech and data, and not talking about the end problem, the consumers. I actually wrote a tweet. It was like, hey, there was this panel, and all the talk was about data and tech, and no conversation about the end user. And I'm leaving really, really concerned about this. And it was one of the tweets that was most kind of retweeted and commented about. And actually later on, I wrote a post called, "Is the emperor wearing any clothes?" And it was really a call out to the entire Data Council attendees, saying, hey, we're all kind of focused in our little bubble here. Let's be careful. And I'll be honest, a lot of people reached out to me and they're like, we share your concern, Juan. I spoke to a lot of people because, I don't know, maybe they were afraid to go say something publicly. And here's another interesting thing. Data mesh did not show up.
Oh, wow.
I was incredibly surprised. There were 3-4 conversations where data product showed up, but the word data mesh was never pronounced during those 2 days. That was
I'm surprised.
Me too.
Yeah,
which I'm afraid we have all these bubbles and we're not talking to each other.
Which bubble are you in, right?
I think we live in this technology bubble where we just think, talk about the same topics. We're all talking to the same people all the time, and we just elevate it. I was just telling somebody, let's say I met an end user, and I told end user, don't worry, I have you covered. I believe in zero trust. That end user is going to run away. It's like, what do you mean? Like zero trust? I want full trust. It's like, how could you give me something? But to us, in technology, it sounds perfectly normal.
Right. We become very steeped in our own lingo and all the tools, the modern day data stack components and how they plug together. But ultimately, what are people trying to do that live and breathe in the data every day? They just want to know how many sales there were last year.
This is it. I mean, let's think again, the honest, no BS right here.
Correct.
I need a number on a screen, and you're telling me that I need to go through 10 tools?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. And I need to evaluate all these tools. I need to go through procurement for all these tools and then go renegotiate all this stuff. And at the end, somebody's like, I just need a number.
Yeah. So have you been to Data Council before pandemic? I'm trying to understand, how did the ratio change?
Yeah, I had not attended the conference before, so this is a new one for me. The community is great. The people, the energy is what we wanted for sure. But I caution people saying, are we just screaming into our own echo chamber in our bubble? That scares me, because let's look at history.
It seems like people took a call to action from that. I think the response was very positive on the poster on that, of like, yeah, let's not forget that, like, ultimately at the end of the day, all of this technology, all of these tools, all these concepts like data mesh, the goal is bringing value to the end users.
Yeah, we've seen several different posts in the last weeks about more value reminding it. I'm very happy to go see this.
How has data.world grown over the last 2 years in terms of number of offices, people, and how's that been?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are at 125 people now. So we've grown a ton in the last, just the last couple of years here. Our HQ is still in Austin, but now we've got little sort of satellite groups all over the place now. And we are hiring lots of different roles. So, things are going really well. Obviously, the recent fundraise announcement from Goldman Sachs and a bunch of other folks was really big for us and a big momentum driver. And as we go forward here, Data.world's really looking to expand globally, as well as continue to help more and more companies be able to, find, understand, and access their data using a knowledge graph powered catalog.
Very interesting. Data.world is unique. When I started looking at it, something that I'd love to understand, if you can explain. I learned that Data.world is a certified B corporation, and it's a public benefit corporation. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? How does that differ from other companies?
Yeah.
So in a traditional C Corp, your goal is to maximize shareholder value. And in a B Corp, you want to maximize shareholder value, but you also have a public benefit mission. And at Data.world, we have our public benefit mission is threefold. One is that we strive to build the most meaningful, collaborative, and abundant data resource in the world to go help society's problems with data. Second, we advocate for the use and adoption of open data and linked data standards. And third, we want to serve as an accessible and historical repository for the world's data. So that is our public benefit mission. So when investors come in, they know that they're investing, we're maximizing shareholder value, but we're also supporting this public benefit mission. So for example, I think this was presented in our Data.world Summit a couple of weeks ago, is that we have, for example, this is one project out of many, like we have a hospital pricing project. So we're creating this cohesive database that is reporting all the pricing from over like 600 hospitals right now and counting. You can actually go to data.world/US healthcare pricing. And you can go see, right now, there's no way to go find pricing of different hospitals. We have that already aggregated in Data.world. That's an example. It's an example of something. We have research partnerships, which I actually lead. So I collaborate with universities to be able to go do some research about things. So we really want to be able to, in addition to maximizing shareholder value, making money, we also have this public benefit mission.
Yeah, we hope that a lot more companies are going to choose to be B Corps, because you get the same financial benefits as being a C Corp, but you defend your mission. You know, you can't take investment and all of a sudden it like changes now the purpose of your company. Your mission is embedded in the definition of your company. And if you're doing a B Corp standard, then you actually have to meet certain thresholds on things like diversity and sustainability. And those are really important things as well that kind of complete the whole thing out.
And one thing to add, we're very proud that we started out being in Delaware, and data.world is brought that to Texas, for example. So you can actually incorporate in Texas as a B Corp. And we're very proud to be able to be driving that here in Texas.
Was that not the case when the company started? You had to be Delaware based?
That's where our B Corps were.
Because at first Texas didn't recognize B Corps.
I see. Are there other companies in modern data stack that are B Corp? I'm just curious. This is a new concept to me. Any other ones we know?
Actually, I recently, let me actually confirm here. I believe not in the data, but for example, Lemonade, which is one of the home insurance, they actually IPO'd, I think, and they're a B Corp. Oh, wow. So we're now starting to go see B Corps actually going to IPOs and stuff. This is a call. I mean, our CEO, Brett Hurt, he is very passionate about this. And I think a lot of the folks at data.world join because we are a B Corp. And that really is, I mean, we put our money where our mouth is when it comes to it. And I love people just to go find all the stuff that our CEO, Brett Hurt, writes about it. I think it's a true example. And we really hope that companies follow this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you ever want to see like a list of how many B Corps there are, you just go to bcorporation.net and like, for example, a prescription startup, Capsule, where you can get delivery prescription medicine, B Corporation, right? Like these are, it's really become quite a movement now.
Wow. Okay. Something I'll go check. So we're coming towards the end of our time here. With this whole modern data stack, so many technologies starting all the time. By the way, just this week, I know 3 new data warehouses that are starting, just this week. Just when you thought you had 350 databases and you didn't need another one, we have 3 more. What advice would you give to data and analytics professionals to keep up with this torrent of options they have?
Yeah, great question. Juan, you want to start with that one?
Well, first of all, if you're a data professional, first thing I will say is don't start on the technology. This is always a problem, right? Data management, we have seen it always as a technical problem. It is a social technical phenomenon. The joke I say, we can take a rocket to space, we can bring it back to Earth, it can land on a platform in the middle of the ocean, but I still can't say that these 2 spreadsheets match. That is ridiculous. One can even argue that data management is harder than rocket science. And actually, rocket science is physics. I can really understand that. Data management is hard because I got to talk to humans. Yeah. I got to talk to people. And guess what? We don't like to talk to people. And I think that's a shift we have to go do. So my advice is zoom out, see the forest from the trees, go understand the real problems that people have. Go talk to people, and do not start with the technology. Very direct.
Yes. And I love that. Yeah. And the one thing that I'll add, I think that a piece of advice is, what's the biggest problem that you have right now in data? The one biggest problem, focus on that, solve that.
We always, even with Tim, we talk a lot ourselves, is like, what keeps you up at night? Go ask people. What keeps you up at night? Why were you late to your child's birthday party, a celebration, whatever, because of work? Just go ask those questions. These are just be humans. Let's go talk to people.
Yeah. Any recommendations on books, like any interesting books you've read that you'd like to share? Conferences, training.
So I always have my books here next to me. So I will be shameless plug. Get my book.
Yes, of course.
Designing and Building Enterprise Knowledge Graphs, the book I wrote with Aura Lasilla from Amazon. Let me give me a second. I got several here, which I would. If you want more about knowledge graphs, here's another big knowledge graph book. Right. Get the data mesh book. This is a good one to go do this. Yeah. Laura Madsen, she was a keynote for the data.world Summit. Disrupting Data Governance is excellent. Now, this one, I believe, is mandatory reading for every single data professional in the world. If you have not read this book, please buy it right now and stop what you're doing and read it. It's called Software Wasteland.
Oh.
This book describes the problem that we're in. That's what, so it's really important for us to understand the problem. Please go read this book. We live in an application-centric world. All the data that has been created has been to support the application, not the end users and the use cases. And if you're interested in learning the solution, it's the data-centric revolution. And finally, if you want more about knowledge graphs and hand, get Semantic Web for the Working Ontologist by Dean Alamang, who also works at data.world. Those are my books. I have all my books here all the time because people ask me this question a lot.
I would love to hear some fiction now that. So how about
I read academic papers all the time, so that's my life.
Oh, I love that. On my side, well, first of all, you can see that Juan influences my book selections, right?
Yes.
But second of all, on the governance side, I'll say I'm a fan of non-invasive data governance. That's a nice one to think about, some creative approaches to really fitting in governance into an organization that maybe isn't ready to do it in a more structured way, and it fits really well with data.world's own perspective on agile data governance. In terms of fun books, there's a book called The Hail Mary Project by Andy Weir, the guy who created The Martian. Been reading that lately, and that's a fun personal read.
Well, I'll add a fun book here, which is called The Four Agreements. It's from Miguel Ruiz, The Four Agreements of Life. Be impeccable with your words. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best.
Wow. Okay. We'll have to remember that. So remind us again. So the four golden words.
It's called The Four Agreements. It's be impeccable with your words.
Yes.
So think before you talk. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best. Strive for excellence.
Very nice. Excellent. So tell us something about yourself, Juan, that most of the world doesn't know. Something crazy that you've done, non-work related, hopefully. I know you've got an amazing like stories to tell. I just learned that you've been visiting Dockstool, if I pronounced it right.
Yeah, that's an academic. So I mean, people do know this. Like I carry my two hats, my academic hat and my industry business hat, and I still have students and I do teaching and stuff like that. But so I mean, my parents are Colombian, so I'm Cap Colombian. And so I lived like 10 years in Colombia, from the ages of 10 to 20. And I grew up during that time dancing salsa. So I am a big salsa dancer. I lived in the city called Cali, Colombia, which is the salsa capital of the world. Oh, wow. And yeah, I learned to dance with somebody called Amparo Arrebato. Just you can Google her and find her. That's something that I mean.
Do it in Austin.
Sorry?
You still dance, do salsa?
As much as I can. I always do it. I mean, if you look at my playlist, I have a curated playlist of salsa. I think it has probably 35 hours of music, and every song that's in there is me. And I put them, there's a reason for it. And it's what I listen to all the time.
Now I have another reason to visit Austin. Yeah. How about you, Tim?
Oh my goodness! I was hoping you would pick me first, because then then I wouldn't get have to follow up Juan.
It's a tough act to follow. Yeah.
But one fun thing that probably nobody knows about me is that in the evenings when I'm all done, I'm all dataed out. Me and my wife, we play some video games. So I'm a gamer. Yeah.
Oh wow!
I did not know that.
The evening routine. Yeah.
Really? Wow. What kind of equipment do you have for gaming?
Oh, we have a PC and we have a PlayStation. So those are our two things. So if you're an
That's
Xbox
great.
fan, we apologize.
Yeah. Where is your next travel, Tim? Any travel? Yeah.
Nothing in the short term. Looking at the Gartner Data and Analytics Summit coming up. That's I'm going to be traveling out to Orlando, and also just we have got some Texas vacations, some staycations coming up here. I know, Juan, you've got more travel.
Well, this is being recorded today, Friday, April 22nd. Tomorrow I head out to Paris. Then on Tuesday, I'm in Lyon for the web conference, which I'm co-organizing. Then I go to Zurich. Another story. I used to live there. I finished my high school there. The first company I did, we were based out of Zurich. I'll go to London, and then I go to New York for the Knowledge Graph conference, and then back in Austin. All of that in the next 2 weeks.
Oh, wow, a lot of travel coming up.
I am a United 1K. I am at 960,000 lifetime miles.
Oh,
I
wow.
hope to, in the next a couple months, I will hit my million miles in 15 years. So,
Wow, very nice. Yeah.
well, that's another thing people, not a lot of people may know. I'll be 1 million miles on United.
Very true. And by the way, being 1K makes a world of a difference. People tell me United, we hear all these bad stories about United. I'm like, everyone has a personal experience. If you're 1K, you treat it like a king. If you fly a different airline, you shove to the back, you're nobody. So yeah.
I cannot complain on United.
Very nice. Great. It has been an utmost pleasure. Thank you so much for educating about data catalogs, knowledge graphs, life, travel. The only thing we didn't talk about were cocktails, but we leave that for a different time.
We'll leave that for when you come on to our show, and we'll talk about some cocktails.
Yes. Great. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure talking to both of you, and hope to keep following all your amazing work.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Sanjeev.
Thank you. Bye.